meditation. And today's meditation is it's going to be a very simple few words and three breaths. So begin by getting yourself in whatever position you need to get into to feel that grounding as you arrive into the place of peace and quiet. And as you take the breath in and pause at the top and exhale, you're dropping in closer and closer to the center of yourself, to the place that you know by your name. And with the next breath,
Talk about
a message of invitation for you to bring your best self to this time together, your best listening, your best speaking, your best hearing. Your best self is either somewhere in the past or somewhere in the future. And it's a much more optimistic posture to be in, to think that your best self is still ahead of you. And lastly, we're going to drop off the thens and the theirs and invite the heres and the nows. The thens and the theirs are the tomorrows and the yesterdays. And the heres and nows is where we are, right here, taking the time to be on this call ahead of all other choices we might make with what to do with our morning. And with the final breath, feel your shoulders move, feel your chest move, feel your belly move, and a big exhale. And you've arrived to this moment, and we begin our call for our March conversation with my dear, lovely friend, Lynne Twist. Hi, Lynne.
Hi. Hi,
I,
everybody.
so, uh, IWN exists to deepen our connection to art, science, and spirit. And as you know, we've had artists on here, we've had scientists on here, and we've had ancestral wisdom and indigenous wisdom on various calls. Bailyn did this call a while ago. And I was thinking about Lynne last night because she brings all three, and she brings all three just with guns a-blazing. Um, Her devotion, she's like a beauty hunter, and you can see her just get thrilled by the butterflies or the caiman or the capybara or whatever you see. Um, in science, which is really about understanding and knowledge, she has moved through the world through the Hunger Project and Pachamama and Soul of Money in a way that inculcates this extraordinary access to people across the world. And then lastly, with indigenous and ancestral ways, that's clearly one of the places that we um, resonate together, and that she received a call, and I think that's one of the things that we'll talk about today. But what is it like to get a call? And I think that I didn't have a call for the majority of my life, and I was jealous of people who had calls. Like, where does that come from? Um, so in many interactions with Lynne in Ecuador and California and other places, she has absolutely informed my courage to start the Irresistible Wisdom Network, my format in copying some of the Pachamama's work to bring people into this group, and her just unyielding spirit and enthusiasm and optimism. And so I have been so excited to have you here for so long, Lynn, and you said yes, and the day is finally here, and I can't be happier. So uh, may I present to you my dear friend and most lovely human and big influence on my life, Lynne Twist.
Oh, Chris, thank you so, so much. And it's a delight, an honor, and a joy to be with you always, and particularly now, today, and with all these beautiful souls that love you and have been following you and nourishing you and being nourished by you. So thank you so much. And I'm one of them.
Thank you.
So
Yeah.
lucky me.
Thank you, sweetheart. So, I, I'm just gonna wing it as we always do. And but that last thing that I mentioned about the call, because you know, I have no idea what the math is out there, but it sure seems like most people like don't think they get the call, don't recognize the call, don't get the call, and then some do. Do you have any insight about your calls and how they've arrived? And
Um, I wish I could just give you a formula, okay, here's the three steps. A, A1, A2, A3, B, B1.
Mhm.
It's not rational, it's not logical. Um, for me, I've been very fortunate. I had the good fortune of knowing Buckminster Fuller, who was a huge influence on my life when I was a young woman, and then getting a chance to not just listen to him speak or try to understand his books, which I actually never understood, but to actually meet him and then work with him in the Hunger Project. And for me, the Hunger Project calling just kind of wafted over me like a wave, like a tsunami. And I don't know how to cause something like that, but I was uh, stunned and shocked by the magnitude of what felt like here's why I was born. Here's something that's mine to do. Here's where I can make a big difference. And then just surrendering to that, which was not easy because I had little kids and didn't have the bandwidth or the space to work on ending world hunger when I had my kids were 3, 5, and 7. And I was very much of a mom and a substitute teacher and starting in my own school. And it was completely inconvenient. Actually, it was like, yikes, how am I going to ending world hunger? Does that mean you have to go to India and Africa and places like that? But it was, let's see how to say it, just undeniable, irresistible, like your irresistible network. And then the second calling that I would name a calling that I received was from the indigenous people of the Amazon, the Achuar, which became the beginning of Pachamama Alliance. And that one I really resisted because I thought the work of ending world hunger was my lifelong commitment, that I would do it till the end of hunger or the end of my life, whichever came first. And I was by then all engaged and ensconced in managing a huge network of hundreds of thousands of volunteers all over the world and operations in 53 countries. So going to the Amazon, which wasn't even on my radar, was completely like shocking, like inconvenient, like having, you know, a banana grow out of my head or something and have to explain myself. And it took me a couple of years to make that transition. And thank God for Bill Twist, who really uh, sort of received it was the call came to me because the circumstances were arranged so that I was in a place and a space and a opening that I could receive it. But I think they were really looking for him, the Achuar, and he wouldn't have. He's not his mystical muscles weren't as exercised as mine, so I don't think he would have responded. So then he really responded, and then I joined him. So and I also got malaria, which I know sounds terrible, and I don't recommend it, but it made me stop. Illness, although I don't love it, and everybody tries to avoid it. Sometimes it's very useful because it makes you stop and contemplate and reset and rethink and reimagine and um, resource yourself. And so for me, malaria was an absolute gift because I was sick for 9 months, and it's sort of interesting, not 8 months, not 10 months, but that rings a bell, 9 months. It was like a pregnancy, and then something was born that I couldn't deny. So I can't tell you how to get a calling to come to you or how to answer it. But one thing I do know is that if you know you're here to make a difference with your life, which I know you do, or you would not be working with Chris, you would not be on this phone call, you would not be drawn to his field of magic, mystery, and integrity. Uh, you have a role to play. And it's not a big role or a small role, as we say in the Awakening the Dreamer Symposium. It's just your role. And when you find it and when it finds you, it transforms your life and you make the difference that's yours to make. So I wish that for everybody. And if you're paying attention, to me, the guidance is everywhere now. You know, everywhere there's guidance. There's also turmoil and upset and tumult and tragedy and ugliness. But underneath all of that noise, all of that tumult, all of that craziness, all of that violence, all of that, it's just it's ugly. Underneath that is a movement so deep, so true, so trustworthy that all of us are part of. And it's like the evolutionary leap is underway, like the caterpillar butterfly metaphor we all use. The imaginal cells are at work, and the little caterpillars turn into an ugly, voracious little horrible monster. But inside are the imaginal cells, which ultimately are generating how we'll come out of this, kind of through it, uh, in ways that are unimaginably beautiful. I think as Charles Eisenstein says, the more beautiful world our hearts know is possible. So I feel like that's what you're doing. That's what I'm doing. That's what each one of you is doing, and that's a calling. I would say you've already answered it. You're already being one with it by living your life with consciousness and integrity and service. So I'd say bravo.
I thought of three things to ask you about after that. One was we were talking about Buckminster Fuller and trim tabs this morning before you got on the call, and how that little part on the rubber rudder can make such a massive difference in the direction of the boat. Uh, as you were speaking right then, if we survive long into the future, we will look back on this time and we will give it a name. You've given it a name to some degree, the Sophia century, but there's something more acute that's happening, at least in America and through America, other places right now. Um, and so many people across the world look to you for optimism. And do you find it and see it everywhere, or is it a task, a struggle?
Well, I heard some smart person that I can't remember who it was. Maybe I read it in a book, and I should have quote this smart person. But someone said optimism. Maybe it was Bill Urey. Optimism is a political act in today's world. Actually a stand. And another word that I love is that I can be counted on to create possibility. I'm a possibilist. And there's a wonderful man, I just said his name, Bill Urey or William Urey, who has created something called the League of Possibilists. And I would say that all of you, you may not know it, but you are part of that league. And possibility is not prediction and it's not probability. It's a creative act. It's a stand. It's a way of being that allows you to be creative and know that the future is not something you can predict. It's something that you have a responsibility to generate. And not everybody feels that responsibility, but it's an honor when you realize you have that opportunity. So optimism is a term used for a person who looks for the good, looks for how it could turn out. But I actually think optimism maybe is a stand. I'm not sure, but I stand for possibility no matter what, and I'm unwaveringly true to that. And now people count on me for that. So now I feel like it's my role.
Mm.
And I was before I left this morning, I'm at the Bioneers Conference, which is in Berkeley, California. I live in San Francisco, so I got up early to get over here early to do this with you, Chris, before we do the conference. And I know that Bioneers is very important for me to attend because one of the things that I learned there is the hard, cold truths about what's going on. with the environment, with the climate, with social justice. Bioneers is a beautiful, beautiful conference that Kenny Ausubel and Nina Simons curate, and they make sure that the speakers never step over or deny the harsh reality of where we are. At the same time, uh, they somehow create a container. I'll call it a clearing where who shows up and what shows up is the role we can all play, no matter what's happening in generating the world we want and what we stand for. And I'm always very affirmed by pioneers. And as a possibilist, I look for films that will reaffirm my stand, poems that will reaffirm my stand, quotes, people, relationships, news programs, um, uh, podcasts, like interviews like this, talking to you. So it's almost like caring for your body, giving yourself good nutrition keeps your body healthy. As a possibilist, I make sure I keep nourishing my capacity to generate the possibility of life. Um, so I avoid things that would take me down, but I don't avoid looking at the reality of life. It's not Pollyanna. So a possibilist needs to be deeply responsible um, for the whole, the shadow as well as the light, uh, and then generate a possibility out of the whole rather than just what you like or what you love or what you think is fun or cool or joyful. So I consider it a stand, a responsibility, and now almost because people count on me for it, an accountability, something you can count on me for. And I think that's one of the reasons you and I are talking today.
Yeah. Uh, people who were alive during the Enlightenment didn't know they were alive during the Enlightenment. They got that term got referenced afterwards. But in the midst of it, they were waking up doing these things that, in retrospect, historians went back and said, oh, that was the Enlightenment period.
Mhm, mhm,
And I actually live in that space. I think that's
mhm,
where we are.
mhm, mhm.
And um, but I don't want to go out and convince anybody or whatever. And that's why the group that's on this call right now seem to be ones that are like, willing and open to the idea that this undercurrent that you're speaking of um, is not a fantasy. It's not spiritual bypassing. It's not uh, denial. Uh, it's quieter, but it's omnipresent. It's the field in which we operate. And that's one of the things that's always struck me about you, Lynn, is that you seem to access like the whatever is the appropriate field in the moment, whether it's in the jungle or at a farmer's market in San Francisco. You have a presence about you that acknowledges and validates and celebrates the field that is a creative that is really the creative foundation of all life. And you
Mm.
seem to have like a train track direct access to that. Is that accurate or
Well, I think we all do. I make sure that I stay connected to that. But I really believe that the grace and guidance that brought the universe into existence is still here. And we all have the opportunity to tap into that. Um, there's a wonderful phrase, the winds of grace are always blowing. You just have to lift the sail. You just have to lift the sail. The winds of grace are always blowing. I don't generate that. I just lift the sail. And if you've ever sailed on a boat, you have to tack and, pull in the jib and tighten the mainsail to have the boat go. But the winds are always there. Um, and I think if you're willing to look for them, you know, I, I was saying to somebody yesterday, Buckminster Fuller predicted the collapse we're in right now. He predicted it 50 years ago, and it's happening. And the collapse is painful, and it's damaging, and it will hurt. It is hurting. It's upsetting. It's destabilizing. Um, but it's also the end comes before the beginning. And that's the title of a new book by Rebecca Solnit, which I highly recommend. It's only 111 pages, so it's easy to read. And I think it's called The End Comes Before the Beginning, or
Yeah.
Before the Beginning is the End, comes the
Yeah.
end.
Yeah.
And she tracks the some of the great sweeps of history that we've some of us, at least really I have witnessed in my lifetime that seems so sudden, like the falling of the Berlin Wall, which, that when I was growing up and you went to Europe, there was East Berlin and there was West Berlin, and you couldn't go to East Berlin. I mean, it was like scary. There was this huge wall, and then one day it fell. And it was like an overnight thing. And except that people had been working on it for decades. And then 2 years later, 1989, for those of you who were alive then, I was, the huge, monolithic, scary Soviet Union at the Cold War which had hundreds of thousands of warheads pointed at the United States, and we had hundreds of thousands of warheads pointed at the Soviet Union, and if any of those crazy people had pushed a button, all of us would be gone. Then suddenly, 1989, Hungary, Poland, Slovenia, Czechoslovakia are free. The Soviet Union is gone, and we have Kazakhstan and all these countries, and people never thought that would happen. It was so intractable, but it was seemed overnight. But people have been working on it under the radar for years.
Yes.
Same thing with the end of apartheid, which I was lucky enough to witness. I was in South Africa the last day of apartheid, and I went to Nelson Mandela's inauguration. So I've seen in history, the women's movement, the environmental movement, all these things that were that were born and came into fruition in my lifetime. And I know that we're in one now. And I call it an evolutionary leap because I think that's bigger than a transformation and more profound. And it's almost un, unarticulatable. I remember a phrase from the old ESK training, for those of you who took that. It was a wonderful phrase. When the first fish crawled up on land, elephants and eagles became possible. When the first fish crawled up on land in the evolutionary story of the world, elephants and eagles became possible. I love that thought. And now, an evolutionary leap, I think because we're in the the Holocene is over and we're in the Anthropocene, which means we're co-creating evolution. We have so much power. That responsibility that we haven't owned and really don't even realize we have is a huge responsibility. And we have the privilege of co-creating an evolutionary leap for our own species in a way that we become part of the community of life, in a way that we say in Pachamama Alliance that we transform human supremacy, which is the original supremacy, not male supremacy, white supremacy, or colonialism. The original misunderstanding is human supremacy. And if we can transform human supremacy into human responsibility and sacred reciprocity with the earth, each other, and the community of life, we will have a completely different experience as a species. The, the narcissism, the hubris, the domination, the insanity that we have in our relationship with all the other forms of life will dissolve, and we will join the community of life rather than try to extract it or exploit it for our own good. And I think all of you probably are aware that the plants are on the team. The plant medicines are on the team. And they are not just, they weren't around. I mean, they were around for indigenous people, but who knew that they would be so prominent and so available? And even if people are abusing them, they don't abuse us. We have the privilege of being supported by the climate crisis, which is happening to us, but moreover, as Paul says, for us, to humble us so that we find our rightful role in relationship with the long-term future of life. So I don't even know what your question is now. Something about the Enlightenment. Is that what you were saying?
Well, just that we're clearly in a time that is going to be marked when
Mm,
we look back on this time, and I don't know what it's going to be called, but it is not a foregone conclusion.
yes, right.
The noise of, well, I've heard you say before that one of the frustrating phrases you hear in the world is it's just the way it is,
Mm,
because it's not.
no, right.
And I use the word homeopathy, like my behavior every day with myself, with my community, with my family, with nature is part of homeopathy.
Mm,
And um, to fret about the conditions that are prevalent and ignore the joy, the possibility, the optimism, the creativity. Um, like someone once said that if your mom was sick, would you close the door and leave her there, or would you go in and tend to her? So there's a lot of
yes.
systems that are sick right now, and they just need our attention and our tending. And uh, obviously, a central thing in your life right now is Pachamama Alliance and what you're doing with the sacred headwaters in the Western Amazon. And I'm not sure everybody on the call has got a clue on that, but it sure seems like something that everybody can easily say yes to.
Mm,
So maybe
mhm.
you could give a brief orientation to those of us who could hear it a second time or tenth, and to those who might not be tuned in to the immensity of the project and the significance of what's happening in that part of the world.
Well, um, yeah, thank you for asking for that. So first of all, let me just share what many of you know, but just remind us all that the Amazon rainforest, which and the Amazon River system, which stretches across 9 countries all the way across the South American continent, is larger than the United States, larger than Europe, and is the largest river system and freshwater system on Earth by far. The next 6 largest river systems in the world combined, do not have as much water, fresh water, as the Amazon River system. Another really stunning fact is when the Amazon River system empties out from the western end of the continent at the base of the Andes, where it begins, to the eastern side of the South American continent into the Atlantic Ocean, the water's fresh for 150 miles in the Atlantic Ocean. That's how massive this freshwater source is. Plus, it's powered by the Andes, the eastern side of the Andes. The Andes is a double range, like in an M, and the eastern range is primarily volcanic, and the volcanoes are active. So the water that comes out of the eastern range of the Andes is highly dynamic water, but it's from active volcanoes, and it forged the entire Amazon system. There's really solid evidence that during the Ice Age, millions of species migrated to what's now called the sacred headwaters at the base of the Andes to survive the Ice Age, the Pleistocene era, and survived the Pleistocene era and then repopulated life after the Ice Age through the Amazon rainforest, which then began its huge service to the planet's ecosystem. Another interesting fact is the flying rivers that are come up from the massive billions of trees every day. A mature tree emits 1,000 liters of water every morning in mist. Uh, and so the flying rivers, which is the mist that comes up from the billions of trees in the whole Amazon rainforest, has more water in it every day than the entire Amazon river system every day. So that's the
Wow.
source of our
Amazing.
climate system. It is actually, people say it's the lungs of the planet with the oceans. And yes, that's true. But more accurately, it's the hydrological heart of our weather system. NASA calls it the rain machine. So the whole Amazon rainforest, straddling those 9 countries, is the hydrological heart of our climate system. Okay, so the sacred headwaters is the area about 88 million acres. You could say 100 million, there's no really line. At the base of the Andes, including the beginning of the Andes, where the Amazon rainforest begins, and those rivers flowing out of the glaciers, flowing out of the Andes, flowing out of those volcanoes, uh, uh, comes through this place called the Sacred Headwaters. So the indigenous people have named it that. And we have picked that name as well because it honors very much that area, since it's so generative, so regenerative, it's absolutely essential that it be preserved. So the Pachamama Alliance began in that place in the Achuar territory, which is in the very heart of what's called the Sacred Headwaters at the base of the Andes, at the beginning of this whole Amazon rainforest river system. And we've been lucky enough to work with the Achuar, who are such fierce protectors of that forest, that the successful work with them spread to the Shuar, the Shiwiar, the Warani, the Zapra, the Keros, the Andoans, et cetera, et cetera. So we now have the privilege of working, along with many other organizations like yours, with 30 indigenous nations that straddle southern Ecuador, a little bit into Colombia, southern Ecuador, and northern Peru. And they have come together in what they call the Amazon Sacred Headwaters Alliance. So the leaders of indigenous nations that used to war with each other, used to kill each other, are now aligned, realizing that the dangers are really the dream of the modern world, as we call it. And so they have come together and created this thing called the Amazon Sacred Headwaters Alliance. And Pachamama Alliance is lucky enough, or Fundación Pachamama, our organization in Ecuador and Peru, is lucky enough to be the sort of the let's say the secretariat or the godmother of that, and it's run by the indigenous people. So there's a governing group of 29 indigenous people, women and men from different all these different 30 indigenous nations, and then there's two mixed indigenous people on that 29-person governing structure that's from our organization. And their goal, the goal of this Amazon Sacred Headwaters Alliance, is to have this whole area, 88 to 100 million acres, about the size of California, be put in permanent protected status, be the first place on Earth to have permanent protected status. It doesn't exist yet, but neither did Rights of Nature. And Pachamama Alliance and Fundación Pachamama was very instrumental in having Rights of Nature come into existence. I think everybody probably knows now that nature has rights in fundamental primary law in Ecuador and many other places in the world now, and it's a legal movement that turns property law upside down. So this permanent protected status doesn't exist, but never mind, it needs to. And we want this to be the first place that establishes that, remember, what governments come and go, this is untouchable. So that's the Amazon Sacred Headwaters Alliance. And we're also clear that in order to have that protected, really, um, it needs to be financially and economically beneficial to Ecuador, Colombia, and Peru. And right now, what's economically beneficial to them, beneficial is the wrong word, but lucrative, is oil mining, gold, rubber tapping, horrible extractive industries. But the goal also is to have this area turn the economic system upside down and have pristine, roadless, untouched or barely touched and reforested where touched rainforest become way more valuable than those minerals that and things underneath the rainforest that extractive industries are trying to get at. More valuable economically to show that, financially they're more valuable. And that's another huge undertaking of this initiative, which is very exciting and will impact, all the economic systems in the world. So it's a fantastic thing that we were called to that place. It's right on the equator. The other thing that I think you all know, but I'll just say it is the most biodiverse place on planet Earth. Not one of, it is the most biodiverse place on planet Earth. And it's not all, but a lot of it is primarily roadless and untouched and primary rainforest. So it's just like a miracle that that's where we were called. That's where you were called. That's where many of you have been. It's just kind of like mind-boggling to me. And then that's how I know that spirit is in charge, not me, because I wouldn't even know where to go in the Amazon. Everybody say the Amazon rainforest, everyone thinks of Brazil, but this is like right there at the base of the Andes in Ecuador, Peru, and a little bit into Colombia. So that's the Amazon Sacred Headwaters Alliance, and someone put in the chat the website, so you can go there and learn more.
So, as you were speaking, I was thinking of one of my first exposures was the Awaken the Dreamer, which is just it's quite how long is it? A half hour or something?
No, now it's well, you can do it online by yourself in 2 hours, 2.5 maybe.
Yeah.
If you really do all the processes, it
Yeah.
takes about
Well,
2 hours,
so
two and a half.
I'm gonna pitch this right now because what it did for me is it simplified an incredibly complex scenario. And that complex scenario is the one we awaken to every day, which is political, environmental, fiscal, gender, and I can go on and on. But everywhere we look, we're seeing these troubling, perhaps collapses of systems. And how do we fit in? Where do we go? And honestly, until I took that brief course, it never occurred to me that you could trace it back to my dreams.
Mm.
And it's not merely the go to sleep and what kind of dream did I have last night, but in my waking hours, just like people have heard me say, voice is prayer, thought is prayer, dreams is prayer. It's all prayer. The field doesn't distinguish between when you're really praying and when you're not. And so the dream is, you know, what do I aspire to? Do I aspire to a 6,000 square foot house? Do I aspire to, outrageous material success, which is what our culture is based on? Uh, and literally, if we shift dream of, what we dream of tomorrow and include planet Earth and the incredible systems and support that this little blue dot offers us, um, it really it really goes viral, and I've watched it change my life. So maybe you could explore that because there was a time where you were probably sitting around with people going, "What? How are we going to put this together? Oh, we'll do this thing called Awaken the Dreamer."
Well, when we first were contacted by the Achuar and first met with them, that was really, kind of a mind-boggling encounter. And one of the most mind-boggling parts of it was this wonderful quote, which many organizations refer to, and we do too, because it really was the way the indigenous people spoke to us. They said, if you're coming to help us, even though we invited you here, do not waste your time. But if you're coming because you know your liberation is bound up with ours, then let's work together. And that is the context of Pachamama Alliance. And so they not only said, we want to have your alliance, your partnership, your support in understanding the modern world, so we don't get crushed by it, so we can interact with it in ways um, that we can keep doing what we do, which which is protecting these forests. But the real work is to go back where you came from, the modern world, and change the dream of the modern world. When they said that, we were like, oh my God, that's a tall order. And when we went home, we didn't know what to do with that, although we kind of knew what they meant, but we didn't know how to deal with it really. So it took some time before we tackled that. But when we did, we realized that you can't create a program to change the dream of the modern world when you're in the trance yourself. So working with the indigenous people for 4, 5, 6 years before we actually realized we were coming out of the trance or the dream ourselves, so that we could help other people wake up from the dream or the trance. And now to go back to your point, the indigenous people said this cool thing, so smart. You can't really change your everyday actions because they'll always end up lining up with what you're dreaming for. That dream will come back and inform your everyday actions. But if you change your dream, and what we started to coin this phrase to bring forth an environmentally sustainable, I would say now environmentally regenerative, socially just, spiritually fulfilling human presence on this planet, the new dream for humanity. Until we start to articulate and begin to formulate a new dream for humanity, an environmentally sustainable, regenerative, socially just, spiritually fulfilling human presence on this planet, then when you're in that dream, it reaches back and informs your everyday actions now. So what you stand for actually isn't only about the future, it transforms the present and changes the way you view the world. It's a change in paradigm or perspective or mindset. You become a clearing, I'll call it, for that to show up. Um, and so we created the Awakening the Dreamer, Change the Dream Symposium to help people redream what they want and feel and commit to for their life and the life of the people around them. And that was the source of the Awakening the Dreamer Symposium. Just dropped my earbud. Just a second. I'm coming back. One moment. It's on the floor.
That's okay. Rich put the Awakening the Dreamer online course there. If any of you want to participate, I know that I have, Rich has, Jan has, a number of other people, Tony has. Um, and for me, it's probably a good time for a reminder because it's such a persuasive and grounded way of looking at the the motive of dreams and the power of dreams. There was something else that I'm having these wonderful flashbacks as you're talking, and when we were in Ecuador together, we had finished our trip and we were in a room, and you showed a kind of a video slide, and you were talking about how, as you mentioned earlier, the fall of Soviet Union, apartheid, and the Berlin Wall, those happened in a fairly short amount of time, and all of them seemed like permanent. And then they all went. And
Yeah.
so, we were not aware, I was not aware of what was going on underneath that caused that to happen. But I wake up with the idea that these kind of changes are available, like the way the earth and the way the universe moves is slow, 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 fast, right? It's the build, 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 and we don't see it. And you showed us a slide or a video that had to do with like validation. And you said, if you don't think you're part of this, and you showed like NGOs and nonprofits that had all been born in like the last 10 years or something, and the amount of people that were participating in those
Mhm.
organizations. And you said, if you don't think, if you are on this path and you think you're alone or it's small, you're actually part of the largest movement that humanity has ever had in the history of Earth. Am I recalling
Mhm.
that right correctly?
Yeah. Yeah. Actually, that was a clip from Bioneers, the conference I'm in right now, of Paul Hawken describing the immune response to economic infection, environmental degradation, and the corruption of social justice. The immune response of humanity is civil society rising up. And he showed on the big screen at Pioneers, the big giant movie screen, the millions of organizations, not just hundreds, not just thousands, but millions of organizations. List them like in like in a movie credit.
Yeah.
And he said it was running on the screen. And he said, now if I ran this list for all day and all night and all day and all night for 2 weeks, we wouldn't begin to list all the organizations on earth. And if I read it for 2 months and 3 months, because there's millions of organizations, these are just organizations of people who are at work transforming the social justice, the environmental degradation, the political corruption, the economic infection caused by ideologies. And it's the biggest social movement in history. It's bigger than World War I, than World War II. It's the biggest participation event in human history. And it's happening now. The No Kings rally is today in the United States, 3,000 demonstrations, but it's going to be all over the world. And that's just the tip of the iceberg of all the people like you, like me, like all the people on this call who are participating with their church, with their organization, with their NGO, with their this, with their that. Citizens' action, civil society is way more powerful than all these authoritarian governments. I mean, really, it is huge. And it's under the radar. It's not reported in the media, except every once in a while there'll be like a blip after the New Kings thing. I mean, the No Kings thing, where it'll show up in the media, but then it'll disappear like it isn't there anymore. But it is, and it is. And so that's exactly, Chris, thank you for referencing that. That's one of the parts of the symposium that moves people to their core when they realize what they're part of is really, really, really powerful, really powerful. And under the radar is probably a good idea so that it doesn't get crushed, so that it doesn't show up is kind of okay. Um, uh, but when the movement sees itself, it's stunning. And when we see how big the movement is, it moves us. That's what a movement is. It's not a campaign, very different than a campaign. A movement comes from being moved in your gut, in your heart. Um, a campaign is driven, but a movement is wells up inside of the human family and moves the dial. And that's what's happening underneath everything. And, it doesn't mean it's going to be easy, that we're going to see some dark stuff, which we're already seeing, horrible things. But underneath it all, the movement is strong, it's unstoppable. And as we use this phrase in the Hunger Project, it's an idea whose time has come and nothing is going to stop it. But we need to pause it. It's like a paradox. It's like nothing's going to stop it, and we need to cause it. We need to produce it. We need to stay the course.
You know, as you're speaking, it continually reminds me that one of the things that I'm so enamored about you is your precision of language.
Mm.
And you just have the turn of phrase and the right word at the right time, and you distinguish between stance and position and I can't remember is it sustainable and
Regenerative. Yeah.
regenerative? Yeah,
Mhm.
and I believe that the vibration that we put out in words lives forever.
Mhm.
And it goes out into the universe and joins a crystalline structure. And if my crystalline vocabulary is precise and generative, that it joins the other ones and it actually creates the future in a quantum realm, which is the realm we end up living in. Uh, I would love to hear your uh, ideas about, the use of your voice, the use of your words, that includes people, is inclusive, not exclusive. Um, is that a question that makes sense?
Yeah, let me see how to respond to that. Well, I think we all know that culture lives in language. You go to a country where you don't speak the language. You have one experience where you go to a country where you do speak the language, you have another. Um, but embedded in the English language, for example, we have primarily, this is different than your question, but I'm just going to say this because I learned it recently. We have primarily nouns. Indigenous languages are primarily verbs. And we're so individualized uh, that um, and things are so much a part of our language material, the material world, that our language, English, is primarily the language of colonialism. It's really about things. Indigenous language, and maybe it's other languages, but indigenous languages in almost every single country in the world that I know of, and anthropologists say every single indigenous language has no term for I or me. There's no word for I or me. In our language, we've got iPhone, I this, I Mac, we've got I everything, I me everything. um, so that's just one way to respond to your question. And it's primarily verbs. I remember Buckley used to say that I am is a verb. um, but also how we distinguish and create reality comes through language. Um, and you can distinguish. So, for example, I'll use an example that um, when things get really gnarly and difficult, uh, I look to see if the content is difficult and I don't know how to deal with it. I zoom out to see what is a context or a clearing that I can create for this content that will make it sting or be valuable or powerful. Um, so I guess I'm trying to explain something. So if I context is so powerful. Context, spoken context, informs and defines the content within it. So, for example, if I hold up these two fingers like this, and I say that the context is body part, then you would say, and I say, what is this? You would say fingers. If I say the context is number, you would say either 2 or 11. If I said the context is direction, then suddenly this means up. So the context defines the content. So that's
Mhm.
like a silly example, but it really is that way. So for example, have been saying to people, and this is merely a metaphor, but it empowers me to distinguish in language that COVID, one way of looking at it was morning sickness, not MOURN. Well, a little bit that too, but MORNING, morning sickness for a species that doesn't know it's pregnant with a new kind of civilization and human being.
Mhm.
And for those of us who've had children, when you are pregnant and you don't know you're pregnant, you actually really think you're sick because you're throwing up in the morning, you're nauseous a lot more than normal. You have to rest, you get destabilized. But then when you go to the doctor to find out what is wrong with me, and you find out you're pregnant, suddenly there's a context. Oh my God, I'm pregnant. I'm I have a new life inside of me. I'm honored to throw up in the morning. I'm excited about getting nauseous. This is a
Uh,
miracle. And suddenly the content transforms into something that not only you can bear, but you're privileged to get through. And and you could say another phrase from Rev D, our great friend, and I think it comes from Michael Beckwith, who I think we all know. Uh, she says, pain pushes until vision pulls. Pain pushes until vision pulls. And I remember when I was in labor with my kids, I had three, gave birth three times. Uh, when you're in labor, it hurts. And if you did not know you were having a baby, you would think you're dying. I mean, it really hurts. But you know you're having a baby. So the more the pain, the closer you are to having a baby. So the pain pushes, but the vision pulls you through it. I'm having a
mm,
baby. The more it hurts, the closer I am to this new life. And that's a metaphor for what's going on right now. And the pain is horrible. And maybe the pregnancy is still happening and we aren't into labor. But once we get into labor, it'll be a co labor, men and women, a collaboration. And we're going to give birth, I say, or I use this metaphor to create the context for what's going on to a new kind of civilization. Um, that has a whole new power to it. So these are just words that I'm saying now, as you point out, but words have power, and that's how we formulate what we see the world. Yes, in Mexico, they call it dar a luz, giving light. I saw that in the chat. Thank you, Kitsia. So it is a miracle to have a baby, and it hurts. It's really painful. The pregnancy is painful and difficult and uncomfortable and hard until you make a context where you can get the joy of it, power and possibility of it, and the labors, you know, hurts, but it's worth it. And so, and not every pregnancy produces a baby. So we need to really do this well. And not every labor produces a child, a live birth. So it's not guaranteed, but we're in that now. That's one way of looking at what's going on. So that's an example of using language to make sense of the world. That is how we make sense of the world. That is how we walk in the world, through giving words, giving articulation, giving context to the content that generates a paradigm. And how it how life occurs to you is consistent with the context you're in. And then that generates your action.
Yeah. We cast spells and spells are cast upon us. And we do it unconsciously. And so when we move that into the conscious space, we can cast spells towards that more optimistic future. We can change the way we see the world.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So this is something you're somewhat familiar with, and this is the moment where we press a button and we go into triads, and everybody on the call gets a chance to meet with friends that they know or people they've never met before, and do about a 2-minute share on revelation, uh, validation, information, whatever that you've experienced with Lynn over this past hour. And then after about 10 minutes, you'll get a signal and we'll come back and then we'll open it up to a Q&A, and that will be the next phase. So I think this one's on you, Rich, to execute the breakout sessions. I don't know if Lynn gets punched into one too. Lucky people that get with you.
He does. Thank you, Lynn. Thank you, Chris. Okay, we are headed in. Hey, Tony. This may be Lindsay, Tony. Oh, we're there. Lindsay's on. Tony, you're muted. See you going? Tony, you're muted. If you're try that again. I think I can unmute you. I can't hear you, man. Sorry. I find my audio button's in the lower left. It should be there. Honey, if you can unmute, I'm here. Oh, getting advanced. No, not yet. Isabel, you there?
Yes.
Oh, it's good to see you.
It's good to see you too, Rich. I'm also in a breakout session with Chris and David out of all coincidences. But on my phone, I can't connect to the audio, so I was trying again.
Yeah. Let me see if I can get you in there. Tony,
Thank
I think is
you.
having the same problem. Let me see if I can see you
I'm
here.
in,
Oh,
it's in room 5, I think.
okay,
It's
here
so
we
good to see
go.
you, Rich.
You too. Let's see if that worked. Lindsay,
Hi, Rich.
Oh, hi, Lizzie.
Hi.
Dave, you were with Robin, right? It did it auto group you?
Yeah,
I I saw that. I didn't know how to undo that
Rich.
mid-conversation when I noticed.
yeah.
That's okay.
Oh, it's good to see.
We always have stuff to talk to each other about. So
It's okay. You gave us an opportunity to work on our marriage.
we need more time.
I'm like, oh, that's sneaky rich. That's sneaky rich.
Uh,
Yeah,
I s-
I think we need more time. Rich, can you put us back in there?
Yeah, you better put us back. We were right next to you.
oh,
Yeah.
oh, good. Still working on my breakout skills.
Well, I thought that was I think it was actually perfect.
Hmm.
Yeah, tough time.
Oh,
Ah,
Yeah, still need more
well,
time.
Vikram.
Oh,
So
hi.
we're all back together again. And this is the opportunity to harvest learnings. Uh, we got to spend an hour with Lynn this morning, and this is the chance to build bridges, build connection with the other people in your triad or whatever your group was, and then to hear their reflections and to share yours and to see the validation of things you've wondered about or the new information that you gleaned. So let's open it up. I'm going to change my view here. And Rich, maybe you can see people raising hands, or maybe we'll call on people. But anybody who's got a question for Lynn or something to add or share or present, now is your chance.
Well, I'll jump in if that's okay. Um, uh, Lynn, we did the symposium with you with Hub and Charlie Gay and a whole bunch of
Oh,
people
yeah. Yeah.
many,
In
many years
LA.
ago. Right,
Yeah, that was a good
right.
one.
Yeah, I did a painting on stage that we auctioned for support, and I just want to thank you for your just years of commitment. The book, The Soul of Money, changed our lives, and it's just a real delight um, to participate with you in this kind of group. And I put a note in there that optimists are the ones who build the world. And
Mm,
I just appreciate your optimism. And it really is a long game that we're playing.
mm,
And, we have to weather the tides coming up and down the beach, knocking over the sandcastles every once in a while.
mm,
But the the human consciousness tends towards expansion, and I just appreciate the role that you play in that, and I'm just really grateful to be participating in this. I don't think there's a question in there. I'm just
mm.
wanted to express my gratitude.
Thank you,
Yeah.
Dave.
And also, hi, Lynn. I'm Robin. I also really want to thank you and acknowledge you for the work that you've been doing, because it absolutely, during that time, I think it was like we were 2008, which was, some of the worst time for us materially, financially. Um, and I read The Soul of Money, and it changed the trajectory of my life.
Mm, mm,
And I had it in my mind that someday I would go to the headwaters of the Amazon. And it's like sometimes when you just have that dream or that thought, even though it took, I think I ended up going 15 years later, even though it took that long, it was set in stone the moment that I saw you speak from the stage. And I saw you manage an audience in such a beautiful, graceful way that all souls came together in a moment. And it was like poetry. So I just want to
mm.
thank you so much for the work you've been doing, and thank you for changing my life.
Oh, my goodness. Thank you, Robin. And thank you, Dave. That's
I think
beautiful.
I think Greg had his hand up somewhere.
I do. I'm here. Can you hear me, Chris?
Yeah.
Great. Greetings, everybody. I find myself out here in the desert, and it's a little bit weird to be connected digitally across the world like this, but we just have to kind of accept the world as the way it is now. And so, Lynn, I hope that we've met a number of times, primarily here in Boulder, not here, but there in Boulder, but just through that community. I'm sure we know, 100 people in common or something like that. And I have this question that is sitting in a level of experience that's not super refined yet. So, I have this frame of reference that, we have these big experiences, and then we bring them down to ideas, and we bring the ideas down to words, and we lose the magic of the question. So I'm going to ask you to stay with me if you can at that higher order, and I'll do my best to ask a question that's not going to be well formed yet. And so I'm sure that you are tracking what I'm saying and can stick with me here. I find myself in this really interesting place around, being a support to people who are part of the movement. I really was touched by your report about Paul Hawkins' talk about how many groups there are and how much is going on, and how sort of big the movement is and how invisible it is. And I'm going to definitely take that forward. And my question sort of sits in the space of um, the best way for me to, and I'm a wealth advisor for people who have sort of an evolved conscious perspective. And so any advice that you might have for helping me help people navigate this transition in a way that helps them feel stabilized in their own capacity to take action. Right. And so a lot of what I do my
Mhm.
best to do is to help them, um, help manage finances and financial planning and those things in a way that removes that as a tension for them so that they can be more fully present to be on their path. And so my question is not well formed, but I'm hoping that you have something to say, either strategically or tactically, about ways to just help support that work and that inquiry that can be of service, I guess is my poorly formed question.
No, it was wonderfully formed question. Thank you. Well, I will underline what I said before is that we need to tend not only to our bodies, but to our hearts and our spirit and our soul with nourishment, like this call, like what you do for people in creating a sense of stability and calm about their financial future. We need to create this wonderful phrase that now I think is in the lexicon, and I love it, the islands of coherence in the sea of chaos. And this is one of them right now. And each person on this call, whether it's Vixen or Tony or Wanda or Teal or Stephanie or Vikram, or, I could name everybody, you are, I'm sure, an island of coherence in the sea of chaos for your friends and your allies. And that's a responsibility that is more poignant today than ever. The League of Possibilists, I invite you to join. You don't have to sign anything. You just stand where you are. And to recognize that you have tapped into or are tapped into or are the center of or are the generator of an island of coherence in the sea of chaos. And to keep yourself nourished with what you need to stay there. That's a responsibility that that it actually is a wonderful way to live, frankly. Great for you too. But if you do it not just for yourself, selfishly, but because you are people of service, or you wouldn't be on this phone call. And then also to know that that people are searching for where they can make sense of what's going on. And when you can, which is kind of what I've been doing on this call, at least giving you my take, how I'm doing my sense making. Because when you make sense of something, even though it's terrible and scary and frightening, it gives you stability. Um, you know, the, 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 so many films have been made about the Holocaust. You know, Wiesenthal and all the different people who that wonderful film Life is Beautiful that won the Academy Award years ago. People can make sense of horror and stay centered if they have the courage to do it. It's not intellectual, it's courageous, heart centered. If the intellect is in service of the heart rather than the heart being hijacked for the intellect, we can find coherence in anything. And coherence is that it coheres with your being. And one of the things that I like to remember, and since you're a wealth advisor, I'll just give my little wealth advisor thing here. The word wealth comes from the etymology of the word wealth is well being.
Yeah.
And well being, the etymology of well being is the well of being in every human being. And that's infinite. That's not something that where there's enough or not enough, or there's scarcity or there's abundance. The well of being is an infinite source for all of us. And we can stay tapped into the well of being that gives us our well being, that creates environments of true wealth for people. In other words, they are capable of being grateful, being in touch with the great fullness of life, which is the source of the word grateful, the great fullness of life. Then they can weather anything. I was just in Nairobi with a group of 200 women activists that are on the ground in conditions of violence and war. And when we were in Nairobi, the war started in the Middle East the first day of this conference, and many of the women were from the Middle East, and now they can't go home. They're still in Nairobi because the airports are closed, the airspace is restricted, and they're stuck in Africa. But they are tending to their well-being while they wait to find a space to take care of their loved ones who are stuck in the conflict. And that's a real responsibility that I think we all have, particularly people on this phone call. I am positive that thousands and thousands and thousands of people rely on the people on the screen to be an island of coherence in the sea of chaos. So I invite you to take that seriously and take care of yourself. Thank you, Greg.
Chris, could I have one follow-up, or do you need to
You
move
know,
on?
there's more hands than I
Great.
can
Copy that.
go.
Yep.
So thank you,
Great.
Greg.
Yep.
Rebecca, I'd love to hear from you.
Hi, hi, Lynn. So Chris graciously shared your book with us, and thank you for all the wisdom, and thank you for this time that you're giving us. And I have a question for you. So very briefly, background. I'm in Ecuador, and both Rodrigo, my husband, and I, and now our children are involved in conservation in the other side of the Andes, in the Choco Andino region, and for almost 40 years. And so,
wow, thank you. Wow.
Yeah. And one thing that we've learned through the experience and trying is that one of the reasons why conservation it's not taken seriously, and like you said, all these destructive industries that our governments are acquiring, it's because society values forests more cut down than standing. So we are optimistic that we can create, if that's the word, an alternative currency that represents the act of conservation, that rewards past conservation and rewards future conservation.
Mm-hmm.
And we know that this is going to be challenging. We've already worked on this song. In fact, we had we encounter Mark, what's his name? He works with you in Costa Rica.
Marco Schlitz.
Yes. And we're finding common ground. But actually, my question for you, it's more, I guess, spiritual and philosophical in a sense, because I know we will encounter problems. I know we will encounter, and hopefully not. I guess we're optimistic. That's why. But how do we go about proposing something so big, so outreach? Because we are actually thinking that this has to be an alternative currency for the conservation of all the tropical forests in the world, for the standing tropical forests, for the primary tropical forests in the world. And some advice there.
Well, first of all, thank you for your work, and thank you for your love for the natural world and your beautiful commitment to conserve and restore and create value for the world. You're completely in the center of the bullseye of what needs to happen. So bravo. It may take way longer than we would like to make that kind of a economic mechanism or model come to fruition. But I'll just say at Pachamama Alliance, we're working with what we call biodiversity credits. They're also called Jaguar credits, that are kind of part of this new set of markets that are used to be called the carbon markets, which were somehow a little bit corrupted for a while there, but are starting to become more sophisticated, more respectable, have more integrity, have more regulations around them, but they're still voluntary. But there's something about all of that that is hopeful and could be a powerful new economic model. Even though some of it is a little bit, do we want to get involved in the markets? Do we even want to go there?
Yes.
But the indigenous people now, who were kind of do not commodify nature, do not even talk to us about that, have started to realize that without dealing with the marketplace, has so much domination and power, uh, we we are being unrealistic to not deal in some way with this thing called the markets, um, and generate a marketplace that's consistent with the restoration and preservation and regeneration of life. So these are, there's what's called FI-BI or BiFi, uh, biome finance. I don't know if you've heard of that. That is a kind of a new part of the experiment in the World Bank. And I'm not an economist, so I'll talk about this with my my arm on my heart on my sleeve, because I thank God for some of the economists who are really looking at this from a deep and abiding reverence for the natural world. But there's so many people working on this. The donut economic model by Kate Raworth is a beautiful example of something that's taking some ground. The bioregional finance mechanisms, biodiversity credits, Jaguar credits, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. All of this is worth exploring. And I wish I could be more direct and say, do this. But I think we just need to keep exploring. It's a brave new world. It's like a frontier. It's an economic frontier, and we need to be pioneers, which is the conference I'm at, which is a mix between, you know, pioneers and biology, and really look at what is the eco uh, unit that can be but both eco, so we go from an economic model to an ecological model that has the economy as part of the ecology rather than the ecology embedded in the economy. We need to reverse that. And I know your heart is at work on that. And just keep wishing and creating and loving and um, deeply praying for the economic models that will turn this thing around. So that's my answer. I don't have a specific recommendation, but you can look into the Jaguar credits on our website, and the Amazon Sacred Headwaters website as well. For some ideas.
All I say is thank you, and we've looked into them, and I actually would like to invite you to read into what we're doing, because I think they complement amazingly.
Oh, good. I will. So text me or send to Chris what website I should go to, and I'll do it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Chris, you're on mute, I think.
I
I can't hear you
Chris.
if you're talking.
He's not on mute. Now he's muted.
We actually can't hear him even if he's not on mute.
Exactly. Okay, who's the best lip reader of the bunch?
Now he is on mute, isn't he? It looks
Yeah,
like
you're
his
muted
little.
now, Chris. Yeah,
Now he's.
but we still can't hear you.
Well, Kitia had her hand up first, so maybe while
I
we
think
wait
I
for
need to
Chris.
go in the
Yeah,
next
it's our
minute or two.
time.
It's
right.
I'm not able to continue much longer, maybe another minute. So
One of our things
sure.
with the group is to respect the time of everybody and to stick to that. So, Chris, I'll take over. Keep working on it. And Lynn, what a magical time together. That is such a dream. I just so appreciative. And to look at everybody's faces and looking at the connection that we all have, I think for all of us, we just pass along all of the thanks and love that we can to your way, and the lessons. Of any of the calls we've had, this is the one I can see us going another 90 minutes. I want to hear from Kitsia. I want to hear from Heidi. I want to hear from
I just
everybody.
want to say a poem.
Okay, poem Kitsia, close us out. Beautiful.
Dreams. A taste of nothingness is but the door of dreams, for you must surrender each night at sleep. With the spell of the moon, a soul can rise. Each night, a small death before the sunrise. In the lightness of spirit, one can paint 1,000 dreams, fetching the impossible, thinking the unthinkable, weaving with sacred threads the absurd and the relative. And when the first rays of sun break the darkness of night, we come through the portal of dreams, seemingly forgetting that we are limitless. Thank you.
Thank you.
And with that, goodbye, everybody. Thank you for joining.
Bye-bye.
Thank
Thank
you,
you,
Lynn.
everybody.
Bye,
Thank
Thank
you.
you,
everyone. Thank you.
Chris.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, Chris.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you, everybody.
Thank you. Thank you.
Bye,
Thank
y'all.
you. Bye now.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ah, that's fabulous.
All gone. I'm lost. I'm out. Crazy.
We can hear you. Hi, beautiful soul.
Weird. Yes, me too. Oh well, I guess I'm out.